When Donald Trump says the only thing stopping him from doing whatever he wants in the international community is his own mind, he's really not that wrong. I'm gonna get the board. And yes, this is a Tim Hortons varsity jacket. This is a really hard one to swallow, guys. I needed a new piece of chalk to help me through. First, we gotta be honest about something. The US is the last remaining superpower. This matters. What gives them this status? Their military, their economy, and let's be perfectly honest, their cultural domination. They don't send their army, they just send McDonald's, for crying out loud. Now your question should be, what could possibly hold back the United States in the international system from doing anything they deemed appropriate? The answer so far hasn't been much. We can talk about their constitution. A lot of people talk about their constitution as it applies to the international system. It doesn't. The United States Constitution and every country's constitution applies to its citizenry. What the United States government does in foreign international relations has nothing to do with their constitution. Can they impeach them for things? Sure. Have they? Absolutely. Has any president been kicked out for the horrible things they've done internationally? No. The only constitutional control Congress has is over the purse strings, the money. So if the president declares war or takes military action, after 6 months, Congress has to vote to pay for it. But once they're in it, once they're at war, nobody, including the guys on the other side of that fence or the other side of the aisle, wants to see the United States lose. So it's an awful lot of power to give to the president. This has always been true. We're just now talking about it. What about the United Nations? Everybody talks about the United Nations and its control on the international community. Why isn't the United Nations doing anything to stop the United States? This is a subclass, so you're gonna have to mind map your way off the page. I'm gonna talk about the UN for a second. The UN has 5 key structures. They have the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Permanent Security Council, ECOSOC, and the ICJ. This is a real crash course, so try to keep up. To understand the United Nations, you have to understand when it was created, 1945. In order to get people to join, states to join the United Nations, they had to assure that each state would have sovereignty, and they had to make very special promises to some of the bigger countries. General Assembly, 194 countries-ish, all have a seat, all have a vote. In order to pass something in the General Assembly, you need a simple majority. Then it goes to the Security Council. The Security Council is made up of 15 members, 10 of which are elected for a 2-year rotational term. If it goes to the Security Council, it's going to be voted on. 60% of the Security Council actually needs to pass it for it to make it to the next level. Here's where it gets messy and everybody gets frustrated, but it's essential. Once past the Security Council, it goes to the Permanent Security Council. 5 superpowers at the end of World War II each got a permanent seat on the Security Council, and each of those countries has a veto, so can veto any UN action. Those 5 members are the United States, China, at the time the Soviet Union, now Russia, France, and Britain. Some people might ask, why do they get so much power? I'll tell you why. Because if they weren't granted more power of their status, they wouldn't have joined the UN. They don't join the UN. We don't create an international body to hopefully reduce tensions and have more diplomacy. Now let me be crystal clear. It's because of the Permanent Security Council that the UN has been militarily stagnant, even though the United Nations isn't supposed to be a military force. It has been stagnant because every major conflict that goes on in the world today is a result of one of those 5 countries benefiting from, training, and supplying weapons to the countries actually at war. Technically, the only time that the Permanent Security Council ever voted to do anything militarily was when China was kicked out because of the transfer of power to Mao, and the Soviets were boycotting the kicking out of China, and there was only 3 members left, so they all went into Korea. The reason it's not supposed to be military is because it's supposed to be a center for peace, for discussion, for debate, for diplomacy, and that's where ECOSOC comes in, the Economic and Social Council. This has accomplished incredible things since 1945. Literacy rates all over the world, medical care all over the world, women's rights all over the world, economic development all over the world. That is ECOSOC, and they've been able to do that because they don't have a strong military presence. And finally, the International Court of Justice. Okay, so the International Court of Justice is comprised of 9 countries elected for a 6-year term. They sit on this council, they sit on this bench, and they decide what international law should be. Now here's the cast of the ICJ and the international system as a whole. The only countries that go to the ICJ to be judged choose to go to the ICJ. And the only countries that abide by the International Court of Justice decisions are those countries that have to, due to their military and economic position. Superpowers have never listened to the ICJ and will never listen to the ICJ because nobody's making them. The UN isn't a supranational authority. It wouldn't make sense for democracy if it was, right? Because we elect governments, our governments make decisions for our country. If the United Nations was allowed authority over our countries, it waters down and diminishes our democracy within our own country. But what that does establish is no consistent expectation or consistent law or consistent rules in the international system. It's kind of like the Wild West without the cool hats. Don't worry, I'm getting there. It all feels very depressing, but just give me another minute. The third thing I want to speak about is the international system. And we saw this happen yesterday at the WEF. The international system has always been set up so that rogue nations can be economically, militarily, culturally, and socially pressured in order to fall in line and actually trade fairly, be sure that they're not attacking other nations, and they're doing the right things when it comes to human rights, right? The problem is the US is the only remaining superpower. We used to have the Soviet Union balancing that out. I'm not advocating for the Soviet Union. I am simply saying when you have one left remaining superpower and they have all of the control, all of the military, economic, and cultural control, we have a problem because who's holding them to account? Let me be clear. This would be true of any state in this position with this much power. Any state. Nobody's gone up against the United States in any way, shape, or form. And when the United States under Trump is now threatening to annex Greenland, everybody's freaking out and starting to have conversations about what are we supposed to do. It was what I told you you should have done about a year ago. It's all about an alliance of middle powers. And let me be clear, it's not about taking down the United States. It's making the United States and this current administration understand that they don't have all the control, that if the next 20 countries allied themselves against the United States, as we started to see yesterday in the World Economic Forum, they won't be able to bully and negotiate individually with states and get everything they want. If we want power, we have to decide what is in our collective best interest to go up against this machine. If we don't, he will pick them off one by one by one. Greenland, Cuba, maybe Canada next, and I'm not into it.